Welcome to Breaking Down Mental Health with Dr. Jones. In these educational videos, Dr. Jones will discuss mental health diagnosis, clinical supervision, using technology in counseling, multiculturalism, and many other topics to help you get a healthy understanding of why mental health is important. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you enjoy these videos.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This deep dive was created using generative AI tools to support accessibility and clarity. The content is grounded in the research and instructional work of Dr. Michael Jones. Today we're going to dig into something really fundamental for any practitioner: trust repair and recovery in telemental health. Think of trust as, well, maybe not a static foundation, but more like a delicate digital bridge between therapist and client. In traditional settings, we kind of understand what can make that bridge sway. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Telemental health introduces some genuinely unique vulnerabilities, things that can compromise client trust. And crucially, these demand specialized approaches to repair. So as you navigate this evolving landscape, what does all of this actually mean for you in practice?
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating here is how the digital environment doesn't just, add new challenges. It often amplifies existing anxieties. It's not just about what can go wrong, but why it hits that therapeutic bond so profoundly in these digital spaces, sometimes in ways we just don't anticipate.
Right. That emotional amplification is such a key point. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We want to equip you with a thorough understanding of these unique digital vulnerabilities, effective strategies for both immediate and long-term trust repair, and some critical considerations for your practice. We'll be pulling insights directly from the source material to give you concrete takeaways, things you can hopefully apply in your work.
Okay, so before we really get into the nuances of digital trust repair, let's maybe make sure we're all on the same page with some core ideas. What are some of those sort of essential building blocks for understanding this digital landscape?
Well, to start, there's telemental health, TMH for short. That's essentially, mental health services delivered via technology, mostly live video these days. Then you have protected health information, or PHI. That's any health information that can identify an individual, and it's covered under HIPAA regulation.
HIPP, right. Exactly. And that ties directly into digital privacy. This is all about protecting that PHI when it's sent, stored, or processed electronically. It needs both tech safeguards and procedural ones if those safeguards fail. That's when we have a confidentiality breach, basically, unauthorized access or disclosure of PHI. And finally, two really connected concepts: the therapeutic alliance rupture, which is, well, any disruption in that working relationship, that bond between therapist and client, and trust repair, which is the whole process of rebuilding that confidence after a breach. It involves acknowledging what happened, taking responsibility, and importantly, corrective action.
Yeah, that lays a good foundation.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's another layer here. It's often invisible to clients, but it's critical. Business associate agreements, or BAAs, these are actual legal contracts. They're between providers like us and third parties, think telehealth platforms, maybe data storage companies. They spell out exactly how THI is protected and ensure everyone's following HIPP rules.
Right, the compliance side.
Exactly. But here's the paradox, and it's really insightful. We, as practitioners, we follow the rules. We have these BAAs in place, these legal safeguards. But for a client, suddenly finding out their deeply personal information isn't just with you, but potentially with this network of third-party vendors they've never even heard of. Even if everything is perfectly legal and compliant, it can feel like a profound betrayal, almost like a deception by omission.
That's a really powerful point, the gap between the legal reality and the client's emotional experience.
Precisely. It's about perception versus policy. And that perception, well, it can completely erode trust.
So that really highlights how these digital environments introduce vulnerabilities that maybe go beyond what we typically think about in person. Clients might just feel inherently uncertain, like who really has access? Is this session being recorded somewhere? How is my data actually stored and protected?
Yes, and this often creates what some researchers call a baseline anxiety about privacy. It's there, subtly impacting the therapeutic relationship right from the start. So when a confidentiality breach does happen, the impact can be especially severe. Clients who already had those background worries might feel this profound sense of betrayal.
And it's interesting, it can extend beyond just the relationship with the therapist. It can become a fear about technology itself.
So it's a double hit, almost.
Exactly. It means counselors have to address both things: the rupture in the relationship and these underlying technology-related anxieties makes the repair job, well, significantly more complex than just mending that broken bond.
That baseline anxiety idea really sticks with me. It suggests we're often not starting from neutral ground, are we? Because when a breach does occur, unfortunately, and that anxiety gets validated, well, that immediate aftermath becomes absolutely critical for trying to salvage the relationship. So what's the best way to handle that initial shock, that betrayal? What's maybe the first critical misstep counselors might make right then, and how can they pivot effectively? Well, it's not just about saying sorry. In a digital context, the timing of that apology becomes almost surgically precise. A delay, even just a few hours. When someone feels their digital privacy has been violated, it can feel like complete indifference.
Right, speed matters.
Hugely. And sincerity, it needs to be almost palpable, perhaps even more so because you're not physically in the room. We're talking about acknowledging not just the incident itself, but the specific digital fear. It likely triggered that feeling of their personal online space being invaded. So counselors really need to be ready to talk about both the breach and those broader digital privacy concerns. That might mean giving, detailed explanations about data protection measures, things you wouldn't normally get into.
And how does that play out with different clients? Does everyone want the same kind of response?
That's a great question. Client communication preferences can vary quite a bit, especially, across generational lines. For instance, younger clients who are digital natives, they might have very different expectations about how they're notified and what remediation looks like compared to, say, older clients who may already feel vulnerable in digital spaces.
So adaptability is key.
Absolutely. Counselors have to adapt their style, their content to meet those individual needs while still upholding professional standards. And one last crucial piece here, documentation. The requirements become really important. You absolutely must carefully document the breach, your response, yes, but also any discussions you have about technology safety, any changes you make to the platform you're using, or any modifications to the therapeutic frame because of the incident, it's all got to be noted.
Okay, so that immediate response is handled, hopefully effectively. Then what? How do we approach the longer-term work, the actual rebuilding of that trust? We know Safran and Murren's model for therapeutic alliance rupture and repair is foundational, but it sounds like these digital contexts add layers, require extra considerations beyond just the relational piece.
Absolutely. Beyond apologies and talking it through, clients often need to see tangible changes, structural changes that really demonstrate a commitment to protecting their privacy moving forward.
Like what, for example?
Well, it could be something like switching platforms, maybe moving from a general video app to a dedicated HIPAA-compliant healthcare platform. Or it could be simpler, like implementing two-factor authentication for every login. These aren't just technical fixes. They act as visible reassurances. They show you're actively trying to fortify their digital safety. But, and this is important, these changes have to be implemented thoughtfully to avoid creating additional barriers for the client, either to treatment or just engagement.
Makes sense. You don't want the solution to become another problem.
Exactly. And this also brings up the need for new transparency protocols. Counselors need to develop new competencies, really, in explaining how the technology works its protections, but also its limitations. Clients need to understand, okay, what protections are in place, but also what risks might still remain, and how are those risks being managed?
So it's about being upfront about the realities.
Yes. And this level of technological literacy is becoming a new professional competency, even for counselors who might not consider themselves particularly, in cases tech. And it's not just about the tech itself. We might need treatment plan modifications after trust has been damaged. That could mean explicitly incorporating discussions about digital anxiety or trust in technology into the therapy itself. For some clients, maybe a gradual re-exposure to telehealth platforms is needed, or perhaps shifting to a hybrid model combining in-person and digital sessions during that repair phase.
It's really clear that individual experiences and needs are paramount here. How do things like culture or demographics factor into these trust repair efforts? Especially thinking about that baseline anxiety you mentioned earlier.
That's a critical consideration. Different demographic groups definitely respond to trust breaches and repair efforts in distinct ways, and sometimes these differences are magnified in telemental health. Take minors, for example. They often represent a particularly vulnerable population. They might already feel uncertain about what information gets shared with parents or schools or other authorities. So when a breach happens with an adolescent client, the impact can be especially severe. It can deeply disrupt their developing sense of autonomy and privacy, which is already such a sensitive area during those years.
That's a really important vulnerability to highlight.
definitely. And also, consider trauma survivors. For them, trust breaches in telemental health can actually feel like re-traumatizing events.
Wow.
This is especially true if the breach involves, say, unauthorized access to their information, or if the experience somehow feels reminiscent of past violations of their safety or privacy.
Wow, yeah.
So counselors working with trauma survivors need to be especially attentive to how these technology-related breaches might trigger trauma responses, how it might affect the client's sense of safety and perceived control within the therapy itself. The digital world can sometimes feel less controllable, less contained for these clients.
This all really points towards a significant need for ongoing professional development, doesn't it? And for robust ethical guidance as these practices evolve. What does that look like on the professional side of things, especially when best practices are still kind of emerging?
Well, for one, supervision approaches need to adapt. Supervisors helping counselors manage breach aftermath and telemental health. They need specialized knowledge and skills. They have to be ready to help their supervisees navigate this really complex intersection of, ethical obligations, legal requirements like HIP pay, and the practical technological realities of digital practice. It's a rapidly moving target.
I can imagine.
And this leads us right into professional liability and ethical obligations, because they intersect in unique ways here too. Counselors might find themselves responsible not just for their own actions, but potentially for the actions of technology vendors, platform providers, those business associates we talked about earlier.
The BAAs again.
Right. So understanding those relationships and what they mean for practice is a critical area for ongoing professional development. And of course, these considerations line up with our ethical standards, things like the ACA Code of Ethics from 2014, the NBCC Code of Ethics, and the CACREP 2024 standards. They all emphasize competence, integrity, client welfare. But the reality is, the rapid evolution of TMH means that best practices for trust repair are still emerging, which just underscores how vital ongoing education and consultation really are in this space.
That makes perfect sense. It's a continuous learning process. So given this complexity, what about prevention? Are there evidence-based strategies we can use proactively to try and prevent these ruptures from happening in the first place, or at least maybe minimize their impact if they do?
Yes, definitely. Research actually suggests that proactive transparency, being upfront about confidentiality limitations and technology risks right from the start, can paradoxically strengthen therapeutic relationships.
Oh.
By building realistic trust rather than a false sense of absolute security.
So managing expectations early on.
Precisely. Counselors who discuss potential vulnerabilities and the protection measures they have in place at the outset of treatment, they create a much stronger foundation. Then, if a breach does occur, the repair process can often be more effective because that baseline understanding is already there.
Okay, so transparency is key. What else?
Well, this requires effective communication strategies. We need to foster a non-judgmental dialogue where clients feel safe expressing their concerns about technology and privacy without feeling like they're being dismissed or minimized. And as counselors, we need to get comfortable discussing technical topics, even acknowledging the limits of our own tech expertise sometimes.
Being honest about what we do and don't know.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it really comes down to client-centered approaches to trust repair. Recognizing that different clients will have different needs, different preferences, different comfort levels with technology itself and with the repair process. Some clients might genuinely prefer to go back to in-person services after a breach. Others might want to stick with telehealth but need enhanced protections or modified protocols. We have to be flexible.
Wow. It's incredibly clear that trust repair in telemental health is this really complex blend, isn't it? It's traditional therapeutic skills meeting these emerging technological competencies. That digital bridge analogy we started with, it really does seem to require constant maintenance, constant understanding, and the field is just going to keep evolving as the tech does and as our understanding deepens.
That's exactly right. And, success in repairing trust often hinges not just on how well the counselor responds to the immediate breach itself. It also depends heavily on their ability to help clients develop a kind of realistic confidence in these digital therapeutic relationships moving forward. It requires this delicate balance, acknowledging the real risks that exist while still maintaining therapeutic optimism and engagement. It's fundamentally about empowering the client within a digital space that's as secure as we can realistically make it.
That's a great way to frame it, empowering realistic confidence. Well, as you think about today's deep dive, Perhaps consider these questions. First, how might the unique digital vulnerabilities we discussed today show up specifically in your own current telemental health work, or perhaps in your specific role? And second, thinking beyond just the immediate response to a breach, what transparency protocols or maybe structural changes might you exploring to proactively foster that realistic trust with your clients in digital settings moving forward?